I am greatly honored to be able to attend this session of the UPR as a representative of Japan. I am grateful to Ambassador Costillo, President of the Human Rights Council, and all the delegates for their efforts in launching the UPR in April. I would also like to express our appreciation to Madame Louise Arbour, United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, and the staff of the OHCHR Secretariat for their efforts in organizing this session. Since the Human Rights Council was established in 2006, Japan has been actively involved in the discussions on institution building, including the establishment of the UPR. Japan shares the idea that the UPR should be a cooperative and effective mechanism. Japan hopes that under this idea, the UPR will function as a mechanism that can contribute to the improvement of human rights situation in every country, and we are ready to extend its maximum cooperation to the Troika countries and to the OHCHR. Now, let me introduce some examples of Japan's international efforts in the area of human rights. Japan supports the view that human rights are a legitimate concern of the international community, and accordingly, Japan intends to make a positive contribution to the improvement of human rights, while taking into consideration each country's situation, such as its history, traditions, etc., and keeping in mind a basic approach, dialogue and cooperation. In order to improve human rights standards globally, it is essential that more countries ratify the major human rights instruments, and that state parties respect the obligations stipulated in these instruments and make efforts to fulfill them. With this in mind, Japan has already ratified most of the major human rights instruments and fulfilled the obligations set out in these instruments. In April this year, Japan presented to the United Nations its third report on the Convention on the Rights of the Child, its first report on the optional protocol to the Convention of the Rights of the Child on the involvement of children in armed conflict, its first report on the optional protocol to the Convention on the Rights of Child on the sale of children, child prostitution, and child pornography, and its sixth report on the Convention on the elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. Japan also signed the Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance last year, and is now making efforts to ratify these conventions at the earliest possible juncture. Moreover, Japan is lending its support to treaty body reform for the purpose of establishing even more effective monitoring systems within the treaty bodies. Japan strongly supports the value of the rule of law and is making efforts to promote and realize such value in the international community. Japan became a state party to Rome Statute of International Criminal Court last October. Prior to this session, we have received various questions from member states on our international efforts. First, I would like to answer to the question about our cooperation with special rapporteurs. Japan has been and is willing to cooperate with them. We are ready to know each special rapporteur's interests and ready to arrange his or her visit to our country as time permits. Another question we asked was about the prospect of concluding the optional protocol to the Convention Against Torture. Japan is now studying the relationship between the provisions of the protocol and our domestic legislation and other things, including how the visit mentioned in the protocol will be carried out in practice. Another question was how Japan regards the Hague Convention on the civil aspects of international child abduction and the Convention of Jurisdiction, Applicable Law, Recognition and Cooperation in respect of parent responsibility and measures for the protection of children. Japan regards them as effective tools for the protection and promotion of children's rights and welfare, although Japan has ratified neither of them. We will continue to study the possible conclusion of the two conventions by giving due consideration to the current social system, cultural situation of Japan, and other things. I would now like to explain Japan's efforts to promote and protect human rights in our country. Based on its constitution, which emphasizes respect for fundamental human rights, Japan firmly maintains a democratic political system and has been pursuing the policy of protecting and promoting human rights and fundamental freedoms. The Japanese constitution, which was promulgated in 1947, stipulates that the people shall not be prevented from enjoying any of the fundamental human rights. These fundamental human rights guaranteed to the people by this constitution shall be conferred upon the people of this and future generations as eternal and inviolable rights. Based on its firm belief that human rights are universal, that all rights including civil, political, economic, social, and cultural rights are indivisible, interdependent, and interrelated, and that it is necessary to protect and promote those human rights equally. Japan has been making continuous efforts to improve its domestic human rights situation. In particular, Japan attaches great importance to human rights education, based on the conviction that in order for all people to enjoy human rights and live contented lives, each citizen must fulfill his or her responsibility to hold the freedoms and rights guaranteed, and at the same time must correctly understand and respect other people's human rights. Following the enactment of the Act for Promotion of Human Rights Education and Encouragement in 2000, the basic plan for this purpose was formulated in 2002. And since then, Japan has been promoting human rights education and raising public awareness of human rights by means of school education and social education. As for human rights of foreign residents in Japan, Japan is responding to various needs in human rights counseling by establishing Human Rights Counseling Office for foreign nationals with interpretation services at some legal affairs bureaus. We also have received various questions from member states on our efforts in our country. We were asked about the existence of National Human Rights Organization in Japan and its status. In March 2002, the Ministry of Justice submitted the Human Rights Bill to establish a new Human Rights Commission, which would function as an independent administrative commission and would create a new human rights redress system. In the bill, Human Rights Commission retains its independence from the government and functions to redress human rights and promotes its human rights, as well as submits its opinions to the government and the Diet. The deliberation of the bill was not completed because of the dissolution of the lower house in October 2003, and the Ministry of Justice continues to review the bill.